Mr. President, this week amid the devastating global coronavirus pandemic, we saw world powers do what world powers are supposed to do in this situation: join forces to raise funds for research, manufacture, and to distribute a vaccine and treatments. This makes obvious strategic and life-saving sense, being both the moral and strategic thing to do. You see, joining forces, all of us working together, will help speed up efforts in the eventual discovery and distribution of a coronavirus vaccine that we all desperately seek. Many of us believe that until that day comes, when that vaccine proves to be effective and safe and is widely distributed, we're going to still see what we call our normal lives compromised. So there's no greater priority. This effort will save lives around America and around the world. And who knows where that vaccine is going to be discovered, produced, distributed. So I want America in on this conversation from the start and in on the collective efforts. Clearly, other world leaders understand this. And so when there was an effort to raise $8 billion for the discovery of this new vaccine, they had a virtual global telephone conference. Our allies in the European Union and Norway each offered to give $1 billion each toward this goal. But who was absent from this critical effort to save lives around the world, to discover this vaccine, including the distribution of it to those who need it in every corner of the world? Which country did not participate in this global virtual telephone conference? The United States of America. You see, in yet another short-sighted, missed opportunity to address the coronavirus, this administration refused to participate. America was missing in action when leaders around the world came together with a determination to find and distribute a vaccine against coronavirus. President's supporters in Congress said nothing, focusing instead on judicial appointments and other things on their mind. Given this president's penchant for blaming others, but not himself for any mishandling of this viral contagion, maybe his dereliction of duty in this global conference should come as no surprise. But it does, because of the devastating consequences it could result. What does this mean for America if the United States sits on the sidelines while other countries set out to discover this life-saving vaccine? Well, we still continue to have some of the best researchers in the world at the National Institutes of Health, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, many private universities and other researchers around this country. Many NIH-funded researchers have spent years studying the coronavirus. Perhaps their knowledge could be helpful with these other countries in quickly developing an effective vaccine. In fact, clinical trials, some are already underway by the National Institutes of Health. I want to commend Dr. Francis Collins, who heads up the NIH, and of course, Dr. Anthony Fauci, a friend of many years, for their amazing work. But it's quite plausible, it's even possible, that the best vaccine may turn up in another country. There's efforts underway in England and Germany and many other countries to find this vaccine as well. In a rush to research and validate a vaccine, ramp up production, address global allocation and supply needs, and ensure affordability and access worldwide, where will the United States be? On the sidelines again? When the United States pursues a go-it-alone, not just America first, but America only approach, while the rest of the world is working together, where does that leave us? It hasn't been that long ago, remember, when the United States first opted to develop and distribute its own American coronavirus test kit that turned out to be faulty, instead of choosing the World Health Organization's test kit, which was available at the time. That set our nation back at least a month, up to 6 weeks. In fact, Many believe we still haven't recovered from that critical first misstep by this administration. Even when its own incompetent response was increasingly obvious, President Trump turned and tried to place all the blame on the World Health Organization, even cutting off all U.S. funding to this critical international body with decades of experience in dealing with pandemic. The New York Times columnist Nick Kristof starkly wrote last month, and I quote, "Thousands of Americans would be alive today if President Trump had spent more time listening to the World Health Organization instead of trying to destroy it." Don't get me wrong, WHO and many international bodies are imperfect and make mistakes, and they are often only as strong as their member states are willing to help make them or help fund them. But the World Health Organization first warned of the coronavirus on January 4th, issuing increasingly urgent warnings into February, while the president was saying publicly that the issue was, quote, totally under control. American personnel at the World Health Organization were also sending warnings back to Washington about the threat. The president's response? On February 10th, he said of the coronavirus, and I quote, "When it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away." On February 27th, the president said, and I quote, "It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle, it'll disappear." Well, more than 2 months later, we're still waiting for that and praying for that, and 70,000 Americans have died. The WHO is a critical life-saving body that helps eradicate polio, reduce the number of women and children that die in childbirth, and stem malnutrition. The WHO led a historic global vaccination campaign to eradicate smallpox. When it was issuing coronavirus warnings, the president and all of us should have been listening. Instead, the president ignored them, chose to walk away from the World Health Organization, undermining its international efforts and ultimately giving more global leadership to, of all nations, China, which is only more than happy to step in when the United States steps away. We should be increasing our investment and leadership with the World Health Organization as one of the many efforts to stem this virus, and not covering our ears and walking away from it. The World Health Organization's efforts to halt Ebola are an example of what its work can do to save lives at the outbreak of a pandemic and stop one from reaching the United States. Presidents Obama and George W. Bush understood this need for global health engagement. I was proud to rally to President Bush's call to stem the scourge of AIDS around the world through the historic PEPFAR program, a bipartisan, international, global effort, the world first, not just America first. Many of my Republican friends in the Senate supported these efforts, and we need them now with this coronavirus outbreak. I was equally proud of President Obama's efforts to set up infection disease prevention systems and his leadership on the Ebola crisis. You see, Presidents Bush and Obama understood the traditional leadership role of the United States on such matters and how important it was for the world to know that we were engaged and involved. Sadly, so much of the world looks at us in dismay today as President Trump undermines American governors who are doing their best to try to save lives and refuses to take any responsibility, snubs our allies, and withdraws from global efforts. That's why I plan to introduce a resolution here in the Senate calling on the United States to join this important global vaccine and treatment effort, something I hope my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will support. Can we put aside our political differences for a moment and agree on one basic thing? Wherever this vaccine is to be discovered, we pray that it will be done quickly, effectively, safely. We want the United States in on the effort, whether it's discovered here in our country or in another country. We want to be at the table to help support the research and development efforts. We want to be at the table when the good news of discovery of this vaccine is delivered. We certainly want to be at the table when it comes to questions of manufacturing and distributing this vaccine around the world, and especially here in the United States. Standing by the sidelines with our arms folded, chin jutted out, saying it's America first or else, this is the wrong moment for it. This is a global challenge. It's a global solution. We don't know which country God will bless with the ability to come up with this vaccine. Whatever it is, we want to be at that table with them in its development and distribution. Let's remember, this global pandemic and any real solution involves more than just our great country. We cannot isolate ourselves from this international race to find treatments and develop a vaccine. Doing anything else will only waste more time and cost lives. Mr. President, I ask consent that this Washington Post article of May 5th, 2020 on this subject be placed in the record after my remarks.
Without objection.
Can I add one last thing? Yesterday we had a telephone conference with Bill and Melinda Gates. They were part of the summit that the United States government boycotted, and they pledged to spend $125 million of their own money in this fight to find a virus vaccine as quickly as possible. Let's join them. Let's join them as a nation. Democrats, Republicans, independents, those who vote and those who don't. All of us who understand that the sooner this vaccine is found, the sooner it's proven safe, and the sooner it's distributed, it'll be the best for America and for the rest of the world. It isn't just America first. It's America involved, America committed, America willing to work with the world to find a solution to one of our greatest public health crises of our time.